Hey, welcome in everybody to the fifth edition of the Evolution of RPG. I have all the way from Ontario, Canada. We have Brian and also my partner in crime, we should say, Brian, in Star Wars Encroachment of
Yeah,
Darkness.
yeah, that would work.
And not only that, but we have a special Groundhog's Day edition because I hear not only in the U.S. but in Canada they also celebrate Groundhog's Day. So what happened, Brian? Early spring? No, what happened?
According to our groundhog, it's supposed to be in early spring.
Well, let's see what happens, right?
Yeah, I know. He's only batting about 50-50, so we'll have to wait and see.
Well, what do you say we get into this?
Sure.
So, Brian, RPGs, especially since we've from the tabletop now we're online streaming. How did you get involved? Where did this all begin for you?
Oh God, that's going back summer of '81. I was up with my grandparents for the summer. We went into town to the local comic shop, and there's this lovely little red box, and it just said Dungeons and Dragons Basic Set. And I'm like, I like dragons. Sure, why not? Let's see what it's about. And basically got hooked ever since. Of course, at that time, I absolutely had no clue what I was doing. It's just like, well, this is fun.
You know, I've noticed in a lot of the local stores now, we have a Target here. I don't know in the United States if you guys have Target. A lot of the Targets, the Walmarts, if you go into the book section, they're starting to carry Dungeons and Dragons stuff. So maybe this era of youth are going to get involved.
Yeah, I've seen a lot more younger ones get involved lately, especially around here. I live in a university town, so
Okay.
we have our big local game store, and they do a lot of work in the local public schools too.
So with that being said, if you're sitting around a group of people, whether it's maybe at work or just say out with some friends, how would you come up to somebody or in a topic of conversation and introduce these guys into role playing? How would you bring them into the system?
First of all, I'd want to find out, are you into fantasy and sci-fi? First of all, or even history. I find that's always a good come in to start talking about the stuff. That's actually how I sort of got my wife into playing a little bit.
Uh-oh.
Because before we met, she never, that was something her younger brother did.
Mm-hmm.
So found out we had a bit of a like the history, but we also liked watching sci-fi and fantasy films. So eventually I said, hey, my in-life group, we're getting together this Sunday. Want to try it? You don't need to know anything about the system. All of us have been doing it for years. Let's give it a go.
Well, I have a little sidetrack question for you. You're actually the second person who I've interviewed who mentioned that they've played or brought their significant other, wife, spouse, or girlfriend into the game system. So I have to ask you, if you ever DM'd and you wind up whacking her, or she wind up whacking you, do one of you guys have to sleep on the couch at night?
Thankfully, that's never happened.
Yet.
But yeah, that's the operative word, yet. So yeah, the other person I really brought in is actually my oldest daughter. She's now actually in a every other week D&D group with her boyfriend and her father, who happens to be the creator of Big Ice Smallmouth RPG.
Oh wow, we might have to get him on next.
He might be able to do it, but I can find out. But yeah, so she's like into it. My youngest one's somewhat into it. He's still that age where it's like, Let
me throw this another question that just came off the top of my head since this came up. The style of play that these younger kids have compared to what we grew up with, have you noticed a difference?
Yeah, it's like when I grew up, we were all about going into the dungeons and doing the fighting and that. This generation, they want to do I find they want to do more of the role playing.
Mhm.
They're happy with going in the dungeons, but they like to do role playing. They want to really explore their characters.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the times are changing. I mean, look, we started out with just playing around a table with some dice, and now we're doing that. Plus, we have the streaming apps as well.
Oh yeah.
But with that being said, what other RPGs have you gotten into?
Let's see. I know I sent our good friend Rex all over a list of what I have on my computer that I could technically run, and especially since I use Foundry when I do my online stuff. And there's 28 games in there that I could do. I got AD&D, AD&D, D&D 3.5, 5th edition. I got all the rules for the old box set, so the basic, the expert, master, immortal, champion, something like that. Star Wars, of course, Fantasy Flight. I have Star Trek. I could do anything in GURPS. Vampire the Masquerade, which I ran for these guys on Saturday.
How did that go?
That actually went great.
I'm sorry I couldn't make it, dude. I got involved with Vampire the Masquerade, and I absolutely love it. I got all the books, so hopefully next session or something like that, maybe I'll be able to jump in with you guys.
Of course, the GM jitters. You're doing it for a new group of people you've never played with. But yeah, I think it went good. I got a lot of good feedback from it. So
awesome. Yeah. There was a time in life, as we became adults, from high school, playing all the time, weekends all night long, and then you start getting older, you get into the work world. Was there ever a time that you ever were separated from the game and then eventually get back in?
A little bit in my 30s when I did a major move. I used to live in Toronto for a bit. Then I moved outside that city. That was after a pretty bad breakup. So sort of was new city, new place, didn't really know anybody. Took a bit of a break. Eventually I made up friends as I eventually found out that were into playing the stuff too. So there was probably about a 2 to 3 year hiatus for a while.
Right.
But it felt like riding a bicycle, just getting back into it.
And that's a key point. It's there. I went through a long period of time, and you just may have to refresh yourself with some small rules or this and that.
Yeah.
Or you, like you said, you just jump back in. It's something that you've never forgotten.
Yeah, especially with Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. That's something I can honestly say I can almost run off the top of my head with no books in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
Like I still remember how to calculate THAC0.
Oh wow.
Yeah, which that's a feat in that system. Anybody who's ever played it.
You listen. You ever see that the memes and something like that? Oh, I was so many days year old until I found out this and that. Honest to God, THAC0, I didn't know what the heck that meant until we recently got back into the game. And I'm like, I looked at my buddy because I was scared to ask as a kid. I'm like, dude, what the hell does this mean? And then he tells me, and I'm like, oh okay.
Yeah.
So,
but once you hear it again, it just all comes back.
Right. So, let me turn my phone off here. Okay. As a DM, you have players out there that they like to investigate every nook and cranny, or you have the investigators that are the go get 'em guys. As a DM, does it matter to you, or do you prefer a specific kind of player for your game?
I'm open to any type of player, really. The one I sort of don't like, but I won't come down like hard on anybody, is the absolute rules lawyer.
Like, we had that question before it came up.
The book says this is exactly how it's supposed to go. Yes, that's how the book says, but most game books, if you read within that first few pages, they tell you get creative. The rules are just there as guidelines. They're not set in stone.
Right.
It's not like someone came down from the mountains with Moses and said he presented his 10 commandments, then they presented the commandments of how role-playing should be done.
Right. Now, again, we know as adults, our time, again, it's very limited. Not like when we were kids, when you can, start gaming at 8 o'clock at night, when your parents go out, and next thing you know, it's 5 o'clock in the morning. As a an older game player now, what is a decent time frame for a game for you?
I'm a bit of a night owl, but normally when I run games, early evening would be good, and then I like going about 3 hours, 4 at the most, especially if it's a long going campaign.
Here's one shot games or modules.
I would prefer one shots over actual setup modules.
Any specific reason?
I like homebrewing my own stuff. I like throwing my own spin on, like with D&D, I would set my games in Faerun. But I wouldn't use any modules or any of the preset adventures. I'd just pick an area, put my own spin on it.
Very cool. Especially, you got them guys too that, some guys work shift, alternate days off, so they can't always get involved with, playing modules. So, one shots, do work well. With that being said, especially when it comes to the Discord channels and all the other virtual tabletop games, there's a big list of a player pool.
Yeah.
As a DM, how do you cycle that and make sure everybody gets a decent amount of time of playing time?
That's a real juggling act to get, and I honestly, I haven't gotten it down pat or down right since I've been really doing GMing like in earnest. Because sometimes you're doing a scene with 1 or 2 people and it's compelling. And you want to get that scene done, then you realize like, oh crap, we've been at this for an hour. Now I got all these other people that have been waiting. But I find if you can make that one scene that you sort of focused on interesting, the others don't mind. They like hearing the story be evolving.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I do try to balance it out best I can, get everybody their time in the spotlight. Some might get a little more, some might get a little less, but I try to keep it over the grand scheme of, like, if it's a campaign, sure, this week X and Y were more of the spotlight, so next week A and B is going to be next.
Right.
And just balance it out. One shot I find is a little more trickier, but I think with especially our game we had on Saturday, I think I did let people have their own time in the light, since they were almost, I think we had 2 people that knew the system but haven't played in a while, and then all the others were brand new.
Now, I heard our producer Oliver mentioned he was talking with somebody in the Discord channel about dressing up in goth. Was there any cosplaying going on that night or what?
Yeah, Oliver, he painted his nails black because he's playing a Nosferatu. So
nice.
To actually do the face up, like he said, that's a couple hours of like full FX work.
Right.
To do that well, or a mask that you got to take off after like 15, 20 minutes because you just can't breathe.
Yeah.
But one of our lady players, she dressed right up in a goth look and everything. And it was like, that's what I like that when people do it.
When I would probably do a cosplay. I wouldn't get like all crazy, but I think Vampire the Masquerade is the perfect game, or even like a Star Wars, unless like yourself, if you're a Wookiee, if you dress up like that, you're going to sweat yourself to death. But
yeah,
you want to You want to Vampire the Masquerade? 100%, dude. There's so many different effects you can do with
Oh,
playing
yeah.
that game. It's crazy.
You can just go to whatever you have in your closet. You don't even go buy something. You could put a suit on, and right there, you could be like anybody in the higher society of vampire.
Right. So when you guys have like the Foundry, you have Roll20, you have all these different games. What virtual tabletop system do you like to play the most, and why?
I mainly use Foundry because I find I have done Roll20, I have done Fantasy Grounds. I find at the time I started, Roll20 was the big one.
Right.
So everybody did it.
Right.
Then I wanted something that could do a little bit more than what Roll20 was. That's when I found Fantasy Grounds. Like, okay, this is better. But there's a bit of a learning curve on Fantasy Grounds. And they're not quite set up to do certain things that when I found Foundry, it's like, oh, if I want to add in special effects with the spells, oh, I can just go grab this module, plug it into the game. I find Foundry is very versatile. There's a lot you can do with it. Right. I know on average when I run my games, I have about 60 modules running.
That's incredible.
Yeah. Nice thing is that if with Foundry, especially if you don't have the cash to go into a hosting service, you can host it on your own machine, as long as your machine has a bit of power to it. So a decent gaming rig can actually run a Foundry game.
Nice.
And you can self-host. I just found it's better to use a hosting service because at any given time, I'm running anywhere between 2 to 5 games. So they're all up there, and when it's between game times, anybody can go in and like, okay, I need to check my character. They got a chance to go in and check it without having to bug me all the time. You can turn the server on. So there's advantages.
I have to ask this question. Just listening to your experiences from what you said, 1981 to present, and you played all these different systems. I have to ask you, and I'm sure even my producer wants to know, what does your library look like at home with all this experience you have?
It's not as big as it used to be. I got about 3 bookshelves worth of books. One bookshelf is nothing but 3.5 D&D. So that's probably about a good about 3.5 feet wide. And that's just all filled with books.
Wow.
Just D&D. Now on my computer, since the advent of PDFs and being able to get a lot of PDFs of this stuff, I'm hitting almost a gig of game books. Like just multiple systems. Some of the stuff I look at is like, this is really cool. I'd like to try it. I'll sit down there and make a character. But it's like, damn, I can't find anybody to play.
Did you crash your computer yet?
Once.
Then you're really going to be on the couch.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's a whole different story. We can do that as a whole different topic. But
so Go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's just especially if it's a computer and a PDF, you can get any game out there now. You can get the rule books.
Yeah. Or you can hit your buddy up and say, yo, can you throw the PDF my way? Instead of spending the $15, $20.
Yeah. But I find if I find like a copy out there that I can download and read, if I do like it, I will actually go and buy legitimate copies and replace.
Right.
And have legitimate and support, whether it's Free League, Chaosium, and not so much Wizards of the Coast because of their fiasco like a year or so ago. That put a bad taste in my mouth for them right now. But Paizo, like I'll support them. I'll eventually get the proper modules. I'll get the proper books, whether it's just PDF downloads you can get off their site or actually physical books.
You know, it's if I would scan through Chaosium and stuff like that, and when I'm sitting at work and I haven't had a chance to game, you know, you get that itch. So I
Mhm.
went out and I bought one of those, you know, ones you could solo role play and stuff like that. You know what?
Yeah.
That's when you realize you really miss having a DM because you have to read everything, and it's like, ah.
Yeah. I've looked at some of those, and I'm like,
Oh, it's cool,
it would be really cool. One day I'll pick up.
but you're responsible to read every goddamn thing that's in there.
Yeah. So it's
Instead
like
of just
reading
listening
novels.
to the guy, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
But
what's your go-to game, Bri?
My go-to game?
If you were to choose for the most part, if you're DMing, you're setting guys up, you know, between D&D and Vampire the Masquerade and Star Wars, what's your favorite system? What would you most likely want to play?
Right off the top of my head, it'd be D&D 3.5.
And why?
I played that from the minute it came out to even after they did that fiasco with 4th edition.
Right.
I just stuck with it.
Now, do you put any twist to that? Because it's an older game system, right?
Yeah.
And we've all traversed through the times from tabletop to online streaming. Have you done any twist to it to yourself to kind of make it like, you know, how we play today? Or do you keep it old school?
With that one, I keep it pretty well old school. It's a system that, for D&D, it has I find the most versatility in it. Because there is so much information out there. And
Yeah.
then you have all the third-party publishers that published stuff for it. And yeah, it's a system that you can really min-max if you know what you're doing. And you can really power game it if you know what you're doing. But I don't mind if people do that. The single rule I have, and that goes for pretty well any game, if you can do it in the game, if you figure out how you could do it, that means I can do it. And I'll amp it up.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate your time coming on. Is there anybody that you wanted to give a shout out to? And then, you know, your systems that you play?
No real particular person, but definitely if you want to try some old school stuff, like especially the original D&D, and you can't find any copies of the old stuff like Old School Essentials or the Old School Reference Index Compendium, that'll let you experience what AD&D and D&D Basic and that was like. Give it a try. I'll almost guarantee you'll like it. They're easy to read. You'll get hooked.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah. Plus, if anybody wants the games, you could check out our links down below. We have our producer's link down below. We'll probably have Brian's link also down below. And Bri, again, I want to thank you for taking time out today to join myself and Oliver on Evolution of RPG.
Yeah.
Happy Groundhog's Day to you.
Same to you.
And yeah, we'll catch up with you guys later. Johnny Belize.
Bye.